A waterway barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, a passage between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. This is the Strait of Hormuz, and it controls 1/5 of the world's oil supply. Today, we're examining what makes this corridor so strategically decisive, how Iran weaponized it to paralyze global energy markets, and why the United States found it nearly impossible to reopen without a full-scale military commitment. As of early 2026, this waterway has triggered an energy shock not seen since the 1970s. Oil surged from $65 to over $126 per barrel in weeks. The crisis is still unfolding. Before the crisis, 20 million barrels of oil transited the strait every single day, roughly 25% of all global seaborne oil trade. Qatar shipped 20% of the world's LNG through it. Around 100 cargo vessels crossed daily. The destinations tell the story. China received 45% of its petroleum through this choke point. Japan, India, and South Korea together absorbed most of the rest. Europe depended on it for a significant share of its LNG. By contrast, the U.S. imported only a small fraction of its oil through Hormuz, giving Washington more flexibility than its allies, but also less urgency. There is no practical alternative. The routes around Africa or through the Suez Canal add weeks to transit time and make energy far more expensive. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively irreplaceable. Iran doesn't have a navy comparable to the U.S. Navy. It doesn't need one. Its power comes from geography and asymmetric tactics. Iran controls the northern coastline in 7 of the 8 major islands in the strait. The shipping lanes are only 2 nautical miles wide on each side. Sea-skimming cruise missiles launched from Kesh Island can reach a supertanker in under 2 minutes. Mountainous terrain rising thousands of feet provides natural cover and line-of-sight dominance over every vessel that passes. Its arsenal is built for exactly this scenario. Thousands of naval mines deployable by fast attack boats, anti-ship missiles with ranges up to 300 kilometers, one-way attack drones, and kamikaze drone boats, all dispersed across a fortified coastline and underground tunnel network built over 3 decades. But Iran didn't need to fire many shots. Attacks on fewer than 24 vessels were enough. War risk insurance premiums jumped from 0.125% of a vessel's value per transit to over 0.4% of a vessel's value per transit. For a $100 million supertanker, that's an additional $250,000 per crossing. By March 5, 2026, marine insurers pulled war risk coverage entirely. Daily traffic collapsed from 138 ships to near zero. The strait wasn't blockaded by warships, it was closed by insurance economics. That is Iran's strategic genius. Create enough threat to make transit uninsurable without triggering a full military response. When Iran closed the strait in March 2026, the U.S. launched an aerial campaign. CENTCOM struck over 6,000 targets, 130 naval vessels, 44 mine layers, countless installations. The strait stayed closed. Air power has a fundamental limitation here. Drones can be stored almost anywhere and are nearly impossible to locate through aerial surveillance. Fast attack boats hide in coastal inlets invisible to high-altitude sensors. Iran's longest-range missiles fire from positions 500 miles inland, far beyond any coastal bombardment, and sea mines require divers and remote vehicles to sweep, a months-long operation that airstrikes simply cannot replace. The next option, a ground invasion, was even more daunting. Securing the strait would require seizing not one island, but several: Karg, Keshm, Larak, Abu Musa, the Tuns, and Hormuz Island. Each one is within range of missile fire from the Iranian mainland. Any troops stationed there would be under constant threat from a fortified coastline they do not control. One expert put it plainly: Iran is masterful at asymmetric warfare. They have been planning for this for decades. The terrain, rugged, mountainous, deeply familiar to the defending force, makes any sustained occupation a multi-year commitment, not a weeks-long operation. There was also a strategic dilemma. Diverting massive forces to secure the strait meant pulling them away from other objectives, namely neutralizing Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Most NATO allies declined to participate. The U.S. faced a choice between two incomplete strategies and lacked the political will to fully commit to either. By late March 2026, limited passages had resumed through negotiated corridors, but this was managed crisis, not stability. 3 scenarios to find the road ahead. Scenario 1 is the most probable outcome if the conflict de-escalates. Iran formalizes a $2 million per tanker transit fee, generating $600 million monthly. Shipping resumes at 60 to 80% of pre-crisis levels. Oil stabilizes at $90 to $110 per barrel, a permanent 40 to 70% premium. Countries accelerate pipeline alternatives to reduce Hormuz dependency. Scenario 2 happens if negotiations stall. Iran maintains selective enforcement, allowing China, India, and friendly nations to transit while restricting Western-flagged vessels. Oil stays above $110. Asian importers gain preferential access, accelerating the shift of economic leverage towards Beijing. This could persist 18 to 36 months, with cascading effects on global growth. Scenario 3 is the least likely but most economically optimal path: a comprehensive ceasefire, international guarantees on freedom of navigation, and significant concessions to Iran, sanctions relief, nuclear talks, and regional recognition. Oil returns towards $75 to $85 within months. Supply chains normalize by early 2027, but this requires political will that currently does not exist. The Strait of Hormuz crisis exposed a central flaw in the post-Cold War global order. Energy security is only as strong as its narrowest choke point. Iran, without a blue water navy, without matching U.S. air power, successfully paralyzed 20% of the world's oil supply using geography, asymmetric weapons, and insurance economics. America's superior firepower proved insufficient against a narrow, mountainous waterway defended by a force that has spent decades preparing for exactly this confrontation. Reopening it requires ground troops, sustained logistics, and indefinite occupation, costs the political establishment has been unwilling to absorb. Whatever resolution emerges, negotiation, tolling, or military occupation, it will set the template for how the world handles the next crisis. And as long as 20% of the world's oil passes through 21 miles of water controlled by a hostile power, that asymmetry will keep reshaping geopolitics, energy markets, and global strategy. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe. We cover the economic stories that connect the dots others miss. Drop a comment below. Which part of this do you think deserves more attention? We read every one. We'll see you in the next one.